All right, I'm ready to go. Hi everybody, my name is Lance Johnson. Today I'm going to be doing a crash course on United States wealth and income inequality. Here's kind of a funny illustration of what we're going to be talking about today. To be honest, there's a lot to cover. I don't have a lot of time. 7 minutes ends up running really, really quickly, so things are going to be really quick. If I'm talking too quickly, just let me know. But I think you're really going to enjoy my speech. So let's go ahead and jump right in here. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the main factors in wealth and income inequality. So these are going to be the main things I'm going to be talking about today. First one is taxes. So who are taxed more and less? What does progressive taxation look like in the United States, and what role does that kind of play overall? Next one is wealth. So that kind of, instead of that idea of annual income, like is more effective with taxes, you've got that idea of actually being able to hold on to wealth over an extended period of time. And then last is education. So what role does education play in people being able to better themselves and be able to move into a different income bracket? So the first thing we're going to look at here, which I think is kind of interesting, is instead of taxes, we're going to look at just income distribution. So here you can see this is like the 1940s. This is post-World War II, where the United States becomes basically the global power that it is today. Large amounts of wealth are created, and the country becomes very successful and well known for that. But in the 80s, there's this thing introduced called supply-side economics. And basically what the idea is that you funnel money to the top, and then those people at the top create jobs, opportunities, they create wealth for the people that are farther down on the list. But we just really don't see that happening. You can see here by 2014 that the top 1% own 21% of all the wealth, and those are people that make over $423,000, and I'm going to break down how some of that is affected with taxation itself. And the bottom 90% only own half of the actual wages that come in every single year. And here you can kind of even see how just the half of the top 1%, how close they are to the top 1%. That's how much wealth there is concentrated at that top portion. Moving ahead here, we'll get into actual taxation. You can see here how taxation ends up kind of playing out in the United States, and this is in 2005, but it's still fairly relevant today. The top 1% before owns about 19% of all income that comes in, and afterwards, this idea of progressive taxation really doesn't redistribute a ton of wealth. You can see top 1% end up having 15% of all income afterwards, but that doesn't end up getting really, fed around like you hear about sometimes, the U.S. being like socialist or something like that. Here, just to kind of accentuate that even more, here's post-taxation, so that's kind of an important thing. How much wealth the top 1% have created for themselves versus the basically everybody else. And you can see that highlighted as well here. You can see that basically everybody from 90% down has lost wealth from between the years of 1979 and 2005, and everybody else has made some wealth for themselves, but really the biggest gains have been among the top 1%. And again, their gains are crazy huge, even compared to that 96 to 99%. So we're talking people from $200,000 to $400,000. So that's kind of a snapshot of what some of that looks like. As far as at a federal level, individual income tax has been something we've been seeing for a long time. Corporate taxation has been at a low place for like 40 years now, so there's not a lot to look at there. But payroll taxes are actually really interesting because payroll taxes are things like Medicare and Social Security. Now, Medicare is taxed across the board, but Social Security is actually only taxed up to $115,000, and you're taxed at 6.2%. So one thing that most people don't know about is that if you make below $115,000 a year, majority of what you end up paying is in payroll taxes. But if you make over $115,000, you don't pay anything past that. So if you make $400,000, you pay 6.2% up to $115,000 and nothing else past that. So it's interesting to see how the people that need the care the most end up being the ones that pay the most for it. So getting out of that idea of taxation, we're going to start talking about wealth, which is that idea of building up annual income and creating wealth for the long term. And there was a study done in 2011 by Harvard and Duke University, two professors, and they essentially asked people, well, what do you think the United States wealth distribution should look like? And there's this kind of steady, steep down. You've got 5 quintiles here. The top 20% own 30% on down. Here's what they thought, think it actually is. The top 20% own significantly more. They own 50%. Here's what it actually is. The top 20% in America own over 80% of all the wealth. The idea of the middle class right there is basically the next 17%, and that poor and impoverished that we just talked about owns so little it basically doesn't even fit on the chart. So here's some alternative perspective. You can see the richest 3% of all families in the United States own half of all the wealth, so they're actually able to save money, invest, do those kinds of things. And then bottom 90% have a whopping 25% of all money that they can actually save. And here's kind of some larger percentage breakdowns of that, and you can see that bottom 40% has so little it's immeasurable again. And one thing that is criticized a lot is that there's social mobility in the United States. You're able to achieve that American dream. But unfortunately, income inequality is actually directly correlated with social mobility. So the more income inequality you have, the less capable people are of rising from a lower tax bracket and rising to another one, and vice versa. And so basically in this country, this is not something that we actually really see play out. I don't have a lot of time to get into this, but how are people doing this legally? How are people able to amass such large amounts of wealth? How are the top people able to, besides the tax breaks that they were given in the 80s, how are they able to continue and save money? And there's things like hiring tax wizards, just things that most lower income Americans just can't afford to do. There's also ideas of offshoring your funds in places like the Cayman Islands, where there's one building that holds 18,000 companies that basically say this is our home address, and then they store large amounts of funds there, and then it's taxed non-existently, basically, by a government that basically doesn't tax. And then things like playing Wall Street, where you can fix funds around. You can donate money off the top of your donations. You can donate money off the top and use those as donations. Don't have a lot of time now. The idea basically here is that more education equals more money. Correct. But the thing is that the United States rates really low on people being able to gain a higher education than the one that they started with from their parents. So that's why you're going to start to hear a lot more about free education for college and student debt relief. What's the point of all this at the end of the day? Just like was said before, primaries and presidential elections are coming up soon, and it's really important that we be educated and informed citizens that don't just hear what we're told by corporations and by political candidates, because especially from corporations, they are out for their interests. So for us to be educated and know what's coming is really important, and also to be informed when debates are going on and those kinds of things. So I hope I was able to give you a good amount of information here. It was really quick. My main topics were, with wealth and income distribution, were taxes, they were wealth, and they were education. So I hope you enjoyed my speech today.